Welcome back to the Benefit Podcast, bringing you everything you need to know about living your best life. And this one might get a little bit tasty again. It feels like a while since I've had a bit of a ranty one, so this one could go a little bit that way. So strap yourselves in. This is a concept that I've always found a little bit baffling. And I'll be completely honest, like I've done this myself, and having come to the other side, I don't know, it confuses me as to why I never did it myself. The thing that I'm talking about here, like within the fitness world, the coaching space, there almost seems to be a real reluctance from people to ask for help. And you almost don't see it in any other walk of life. Like just to give you a few examples, if your boiler broke down, you would call a plumber pretty much immediately. If your car broke down, you would get in touch with a mechanic pretty much immediately. If you broke your leg, you would get in touch with a doctor. You go to the hospital pretty much immediately. But when people break down when it comes to their fitness progress, their weight loss, when people don't actually know how to get to where they want to be, there's this big barrier with them asking for help or reaching out to a coach, almost to the point where there's like an active backlash against it. I'm in a lot of fitness communities and forums and stuff, in various different places. And the amount of times that people will ask questions and they're met with, you'll get a lot of people who will say, hire a coach, work with a trainer, ask someone who knows what they're doing. For every one of those comments, there's at least 10 to 20 who will just actively say the opposite. You absolutely don't need a coach. You can do this all yourself. You just need to research things online. The same could go for all of those other things I said, right? Like if your boiler broke down, there are probably YouTube videos that would show you how to fix it. The thing is, you're not an expert in that, and you could end up making it far worse. Same goes if your car broke down. You probably could check it, a load of YouTube videos, find something that might be the thing, spend a load of money, waste a load of time, and still not fix your car. If you broke your leg, you could try and fashion your own plaster cast and try and, push that thing back together. You could end up losing your leg. It just, in those instances, you're probably listening or watching this thinking, well, of course that's the case. Why on earth would I ever even try those? But when it comes to people's, fat loss, muscle building, fitness journeys, it's almost like it's just this defensive thing kicks in, and it's like, I can't ask for help. And sometimes, that's met with why should I pay for this when all of this information's free online? Again, the same goes for all of those things I've just mentioned, but you will end up spending far more money and wasting way more time trying to do this stuff yourself and never quite getting there. Most people, in the case of struggling with fat loss or weight loss or fitness, are probably going to turn to some form of supplement, medication, whatever it might be, that's going to cost you a lot of money, and in most instances isn't going to do anything. It's not going to address the problem. So the argument in that sense that there's a cost element just doesn't really make any sense. And it's a little bit of a null and void thing. Time, you could potentially spend hours, weeks, months, years digging into all the data, watching all of the information, and eventually you might figure out what works for you. You could be 10 years down the line before that happens. Or you could ask someone for help who's been through all of this, who studied it, who understands, who has expertise, experience, who's able to get you that same result in a fraction of the time. So again, that argument is a little bit null and void. Now, I'm taking nothing away from the fact that I do appreciate there's a cost element to this, and I'm certainly not saying that people should get themselves into debt to achieve this or anything of that nature. Like, that's not what I'm saying here at all. But it just doesn't really make sense as an argument. And it like I say, it does really baffle me. And I was the same, like, for a long time. You know, I spent 10, 12 years trying to figure everything out by myself. You know, I was reading all the magazines. I was reading everything I could online for as much as there was online. I was watching what I could watch that was available at the time. And I still wasn't really much further ahead after 10 or 12 years. And I finally reached that point where I was like, I'm not actually sure that I can do this myself. And immediately, you know, within the first 12 weeks of working with someone, I achieved the transformation I'd been trying to achieve for 10 to 12 years prior. And that was in 12 weeks. You know, what then came beyond that was just more and more progress. And I know some people will listen and watch this and think, you know, you're just being biased, like, you're a coach, this is what you do for a living. That is true. But there's also a reason I do this for a living, because I don't want people to be in the situation that I was in. I don't want people to be spending the next 10, 12 years going round and round and round in circles, because I know how frustrating that is. I know how annoying that is. And there's one thing that I really wish I'd have done sooner, is ask for help. Because if I'd have asked for help after the first year or two even of trying and not getting anywhere, I could be 10 years further ahead than I am. 10 years. That's a huge amount of time, you know, and it is what it is. And I can't change the past, but I can potentially help you to change your future. And I think that's a very powerful thing. So, you know, like I say, it does baffle me slightly that we are in the situation we're in. We're in this weird environment where there is almost a bit of a backlash against the fitness space and coaches. And I also get that to some extent, because there are also some terrible coaches out there. There are coaches who are very much in this purely to make a quick buck. They'll copy and paste you plans. They'll just do nothing at all that a coach should do. So again, I do understand and appreciate that. And, you know, people may have been burned by that in the past, and that's naturally going to make you more skeptical. I also did experience that. You know, I had to go through 2 pretty terrible coaches before finding the one that finally actually worked and was a really good coach. You know, I went through 2 coaches who took weeks to get back to me on anything that I asked, who sent me meal plans that were the same 6 meals every day for weeks and months on end. You know, all of that stuff I've been through. And all of that stuff has also shaped me to be the coach I am today, because I don't ever want to be that kind of coach. Like, I want to be involved. I want to be communicative. I want it to be a supportive environment that ultimately gets you where you want to be, because that's why you're getting in touch in the first place. So look, I do understand. I do understand there is a cost like element to it. I do understand that some people can't afford it. But if you are in a position where, even just thinking about right now, like, if you're spending 50, 70, £100 a month on supplements for stuff that you probably don't need, it's potentially 50, 70, £100 a month that you could be putting towards something that is going to help you and that is going to move you forwards. You know, less than, and that's probably bottom end of what people could be wasting money wise. You know, I know the likes of the fat loss injections these days are hundreds and hundreds of pounds every month. And again, even though you might see some short-term results with those, the vast majority of people aren't seeing long-term sustainable ones. So is it really having the desired effect? My argument would be no. You know, effectively, you could have spent a lot of money for a short-term thing, but if you're just going to revert back, then, you know, that's money wasted, in my opinion. Again, you know, they're all, obviously it's circumstantial. It depends on what's going on, but yeah, I needed to get that off my chest, because it is still a very baffling situation to me that people are so willing to ask for help in almost every other walk of life. But there is this big thing that almost stops people or holds people back when it comes to their own health. And ultimately, your own health is the most important, because if you haven't got that, we're all pretty fucked. So there we have it. Please do feel free to, to ask any questions on that, to come back again with your own feedback. If you've experienced good or bad coaching, if you've got, particular questions that you might want to ask about the process, there might be particular things that I've not touched on there that are holding you back, please let me know. I'm always open to have conversations with people. So at Ben Howard Fitness, any of those socials, ben@benhowardfitness.com is the email, or comment below wherever you're watching or listening, and I will get back to every single one of those as well. But thanks again for being here. I will, of course, be back again next week with another one. So have an amazing rest of your week, an awesome weekend, and we will catch up very, very soon.